pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we're here for hearing for Bob Gobar on employee discipline, and Bob has chosen to have a public hearing to review process. At this time, I'm going to have Pat kind of explain kind of how this meeting would go, and we'll start from there. Go ahead, Pat. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Well, you've already said this. The whole purpose is about you, Bob, at your request. Do you mind if I call you Bob, or should I call you Mr.
I'm
Gobar?
fine with that.
Okay. The city commission is your judge and jury both tonight, and they're also hosting this. This is a hearing. It's a quasi-judicial proceeding. It's not judicial, so there won't be any oath giving. Any witnesses will just be speaking their opinions, including yourself, and telling your story. And the commission, since they're the decision-making body, will be able to ask questions of anybody, the witnesses and yourself. As the attorney for the city, I've been asked to call the city witnesses, and I'll start them off by asking some questions, and you'll have an opportunity to also ask the witnesses questions. So with that, and Mr. Obenauer is going to be the judge, so he'll be the one controlling the flow of things here from the floor, and he gets to control the meeting. So we're all obedient to the president of the commission tonight. I'm going to review the little historical information as to what led to this. As you know, the city of Hazen has personnel policy manual for employees, and chapter or section 8 of the policy book is the applicable section for this proceeding. The city can only discipline employees when it has cause. Section 8.1 lists 19 such causes. These include in subsection 3 if the employee is offensive in his conduct, uses abusive language in public or towards public, city officials, or fellow employees. Subsection 8 allows discipline if an employee refuses or fails to perform job assignments. Subsection 9 allows discipline when an employee refuses or fails to follow orders of a supervisor. This is insubordination. Subsection 19 permits discipline for an employee who displays conduct unbecoming of a municipal officer. Then in section 8.2, the policy manual lists the forms of disciplinary action, beginning with oral reprimands and leading up to dismissal. The city is not bound to follow any order of discipline, but is to choose the form of discipline which best suits the violations and best serves the interests of the city. At its regular meeting held September 17th, the city heard from Commissioner Wolf, who holds city busing portfolio, a report charging you with offensive conduct with the public and fellow employees, failing to follow orders from your immediate supervisor, and displayed conduct unbecoming a municipal employee. The commission was also informed that there have been previous disciplinary actions against you for similar conduct. As a result of the totality of those circumstances, and in particular violating subsections 3, 9, and 19 of the Hazen's policies, the commission voted to terminate your employment with the city. This hearing is being held within 10 days of the charges having been filed with the city and you being informed of the charges. You were also informed you had a right to a hearing, and you chose to request this hearing tonight. So I don't have to go into I've already repeated that this is nobody will be placed under oath, but you are expected to testify honestly as to any testimony that you give. This is not an opportunity to be derogatory towards others, but is an opportunity to express why the commission was wrong in voting to terminate your city employment. So does anybody have any questions about the process or the procedures tonight? Okay. If you'd like to get right into the hearing, I'd like to kind of arrange this maybe a little differently. Have a chair up here for the witnesses, and I'm gonna have Peggy be our first witness for the city. And do you have any hearing issues? Can you hear me okay? And hear, okay, I do have hearing issues, so speak loudly.
My father had hearing issues.
Okay. Are we ready? Okay. Peggy, what's your position with the city of Hazen?
I'm the lead bus driver and also supervisor for busing.
Okay, and if you think these questions are a little too, repetitive and so on, one of the reasons I'm asking some of this background information is we are being recorded anyway. That's the only record we'll have of this, along with Monty's notes. We don't have a court reporter or somebody like you'd have in a formal proceeding, so. And how long have you been the supervisor for the city of Hazen?
Since Marion Keller left, and I can't tell you exactly how many years.
Okay,
It's been like around 8, 9 years.
and who are your supervisors?
My immediate supervisor is Monty, and busing portfolio is Nancy.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about your job responsibilities.
My job responsibility is to make sure that our busing are running, that they're running safely, that they're running on time. I'm the one that the people call when they want to change. I'm also the one that lines up who goes where when. I do the busing routes. I do the schedules for the workers. I make sure that things are kept up to par, that the buses are kept clean, the bus bays, that everything is just safe. And people get from point A to point B safely.
Okay. Do you recall when Mr. Gobar was hired to be a bus driver?
Yes.
And did you participate in that decision?
I only participated to the fact that I did not make the decision. I really did not know him or anything. We needed a bus driver and he was hired.
Tell me about Mr. Gobar's work history since he became a driver and you became the supervisor.
Well, I was still in the office in here and we have all women except for him until lately. Now we have another guy working. The problems as far as getting someone from one place to the next, everything was fine. As far as anything extra, it never was. I have been able to, for a long time, ask him to do something. He'll refuse to wash buses, he'll refuse to do anything like that. In the office in here, his thing is really you can't talk normally like this, you have to raise your voice, you have to yell. I have had Buster come in and hand me a tape recorder and say, here, you need to have this taped. I've been called names, lots of things like that.
Did he come to work on time?
Came to work on time, yes.
Did
Did not miss work, I mean, as far as that, he was very good.
When you were giving him orders, were these orders that were common to other bus drivers?
It was the same thing I asked every other bus driver to do. I mean, you are to keep your buses, you have to keep the bus bay clean. Just simple things, it's all in here, the paperwork was fine, the writing things down, the keeping track of the calls and stuff. Bob's not the only one that has, forgotten to do things like that, yes, that I will admit. But it's just, don't ask him to do anything that he felt he shouldn't have to do.
What was his relationship with the passengers, citizens, that you was with?
The passengers, I have many. I have the supervisor from the group home has called me many, many times because we hauled someone from the group home to Beulah especially, and she would come home crying because of things that he said to her. I would get called in and wanting to know why he did this. I would ask him to please quit, and there was just always an excuse for it. I've had people that, not too long ago, we had a lady that broke her shoulder. A week after we started hauling her, her daughter came in very angry because he had told her that she was such a nuisance to get on and off of the bus. I have one lady in particular in town that will call, and if he answers, she will hang up, and she will wait until one of the girls call. I have had, a year ago, we had coaches that have asked that he not drive anymore because of things that happened when he was driving baseball. You know, and things that they did not feel were, you know, were right that were being said and things.
When you would visit with Mr. Gobar about his resistance to follow your orders, did he give an explanation for why?
Well, most of the time, either I'm stupid or I'm a liar. I've been called a bitch. I've been told to kiss his ass. I've been asked if, well, should I wipe your butt too? My little great niece, he told her that I was a witch. When I confronted him about it, he said, well, she might as well find out what you're gonna be like or what you are like. It's always an excuse. There's always a reason why he doesn't have to do what I ask him to do.
With that kind of conduct, was he disciplined for?
I would go to Monty because I cannot do anything. It has to be Monty or the commissioners. I know that he was given time off before. One incident was backed into the garbage truck one time, but that wasn't his fault and he did not know that you had to report an accident. Another time we had an accident and he left the scene of an accident, and so I called Monty and I called Tony. And every time I ask him to do anything or anything like this happens, it's just a big screaming match. It's just, we get nowhere.
What were the most recent incidents that were?
Most
reported?
recent incident was 2 weeks ago. We hired a new driver. In fact, 2 weeks ago today, we hired a new driver. And I had redone the schedules. We have 80-some kids right now that we're transporting to school. And so I redid the schedules to who's doing which routes and things. And I had 2 routes that have 20, well, we have 18 passenger, which we don't use. We have 22 passengers and 2 24 passengers. I gave him the route with the 16 passengers because it's according to which sections in town you are. And so I had explained to him on Friday that he's going to use in 2017 because it's a smaller bus and there's less kids. And that this woman would be using the bigger one. Well, he just came, just howling and screaming. I mean, both of my drivers were scared. They actually walked out of the building. The new one was shaking so bad because she just could not believe it, that anyone would yell at us like that. Yeah, just wasn't a good situation.
So, how did that,
So,
keep telling what
yeah,
happened?
we went, we did our routes, and when we came back, then Monty had come out there, and yeah, that was over 2 hours.
Okay.
Very, very unsettling discussion for 2 hours of why it was not right. And one thing is that every time, no matter what you bring up, if it's the simplest thing like wash a bus or anything, I don't have to. Joyce didn't have to 3 years ago that one time when she went someplace. It's always to come back that it's someone else's fault.
So how did you get along with these other bus drivers if you were giving them different, or changing assignments?
They're fine with it. I mean, I like to rotate them.
But how did Mr. Gobar get along with them? And did you observe them? You said that one of your bus drivers was so frightened, the newest one, so
She
frightened
was.
she was shaking.
She was. In fact, I talked her out of quitting that day. I mean, she was honestly gonna quit. And at the same time, Candy had decided that they would wait until after the commission meeting on Monday night, and she was putting in her resignation the next day. I mean, they don't, it's to the point where, well, yeah, I'm scared of him. I mean, I'm scared to have him come out there, and so are they.
Did this type of conduct have a starting point, or was it always
To me,
kind of present?
it's always been from the first time I ever asked him to take the van out here. We had used to have a van back here, and I remember asking him to take it out and clean it, and no, there's no way he was going to. If you wanna do it yourself. I mean, this has been going on constantly. I've gone to Nancy many times and said, Nancy, help me, I don't know what to do. I've gone to Monty many, many times. I just got tired of being called a liar, I just got to being called a bitch and everything else it's too much. It's just,
Do you have personal fear for
do I,
Mr. Goldberg?
yes, I do.
I'd just like to invite you now to ask your own questions, Peggy, if you have any.
So then, it's like you said that you might have, I guess, recordings of the conversations that you had with Bob.
The recordings that we have with Bob are any that's on the camera with Sarah. There, I don't know if Monty still has it or not. I mean, there should have been a recording of how he treated Tony and I when he had that accident. There's recordings, there's gotta be recordings of both 2 weeks ago on Monday, and then again on Tuesday, when he had the incident with the employee from, Monty, help me, what did she work? Meals on Wheels. Meals on Wheels. I mean, those recordings have to be there because we have both sound and picture on. The ones, I do not believe that the ones in the garage have sound.
No.
So then has it's like you, Jerry, Vermonti, or it's like Nancy, it's like you these before?
I haven't,
Yeah.
well, I was there, so.
Okay.
I have a year or so ago, I've viewed a couple. Yeah. These recent ones I have not.
I have not the recent ones either.
And both Monty and Nancy will be testifying also, so
Okay.
they'll get a chance to
Okay.
get some other.
I don't have any questions.
And we all another, Mr. Goldberg, you are free to ask a question.
I don't know if I have any. I probably do have some questions, but the one thing that I would rebut was what she said about the lady with the broken shoulder. I had plenty of complaints from her regarding Candy. And I never in a million years would tell her that she's a pain in the butt. That's part of our job, is to help the elderly around, especially if they're disabled. And it's one of the pleasures that I enjoy of the job, is helping people as much as I possibly can. Admittedly, she's an independent lady, but we've always had a good rapport anytime that I've had her as a passenger. Woman in question is Margie Miller.
Okay, but you're kind of testifying now about the rest of
Well,
your
I don't
story.
know how to
You
do
will.
this.
You'll get a chance to tell your whole story, but do you have any questions for Peggy?
Didn't we have a conversation about 2017, the Friday before the new routes?
Yes, we did.
And at that time, I explained why it was unsafe for me to use that bus, correct?
You did.
And before the conversation was even over, another passenger got added to it, if I remember right. So it was on par with the other routes. Didn't look like anybody was necessarily overloaded at all.
But they're maxed.
Well, 2017 isn't maxed, I know that.
The thing is that
I didn't pay that much attention to, the other two routes as much. But I believe the first thing is transporting kids safely. Now, granted, I did not forwardly think, and Monty and I had a conversation about this, that in doing this route, the issue that I have with the 2017 bus is, in particular, just so you understand where I'm coming from, is when you're heading north on County 27 and you're at Tesoro and All Seasons Arena is there and you're at the stop sign, that blind spot window that's over on the right-hand side, I have a lovely view of the tunnel. I cannot see anything down the highway. And how many accidents have we had at that? Not us as in busing, but just in general. How many accidents have happened at that intersection? I certainly didn't want to have an accident, and especially with school kids. But also the route that I have does not require me to do that. But it was inevitable that sooner or later I was going to have to make that crossing with that bus. And that was my primary concern, was the safety of the kids. And I don't believe I was yelling about it. I do, when I get excited, my voice will elevate. But no, my primary concern is always safety when it comes to the kids. And well, any of the passengers, obviously.
Do other drivers have issues with,
We
visual issues with
We
that?
all do. I drove that one 3 times last week, and all you have to do is just look down. You have to slowly get your way up to that corner. And it was not even so much that it was just the screaming, it was the calling me a bitch, it was the just going off. You know,
As I recall, I did not call you a bitch during either of those conversations.
I can have either driver come in here and say you did.
Of course, I'm sure they'll say whatever you told them to.
We don't have that, but go ahead.
Monty, were you at that particular meeting?
On Friday.
The one that they're discussing right now?
I was not there on Friday, I was there on Monday morning.
This happened on Monday morning, and this happened, Monty was called in after this happened, because of this happening.
That's untrue. There was a scheduled meeting for all the bus drivers after our routes at 8:30. The new driver, I was told, couldn't attend the meeting because she had another issue of something to do. It was on the board for 3 days that we had a meeting at 8:30 on Monday. Apparently I was the only one to attend the meeting. Because after I got there and got parked, they both took off.
What's your response?
My response is that I found out at 8:15 that she could not make the meeting. Monty was there. I let Monty know everything had happened, you know, about this. So I always call Monty right away and let Monty know what's going on. So yes, it ended up being just Monty and Bob and I, because this lady could not make it and she was not in any shape by that time to even sit through the meeting. Both of the girls were just very, very upset about what had happened.
Anything else from the commission? Anything else?
No.
Mr. Goldberg?
I'd say that's hearsay.
Well, you'll get your chance. Thanks, Greg. Now, why don't you stick around in case they have some other
Yep.
questions here. Monty, you get break from note taking. Go.
Do you want me to take notes?
Well, we all know you, so I won't have you state your name like I usually do for witnesses, but tell me about your job with Hazen.
I started with the city of Hazen as the auditor in October of 2012. My main job is to oversee the finances of the city. And then in conjunction with that, I do the HR for the city, and I am supervisor or administrator for the busing.
And are the busing regulations all set by the city of Hazen, or are there other entities involved?
We're federally funded, so there are federal guidelines. We receive state funding, so there are state guidelines, plus then we have our own policy.
Okay. And you supervise Peggy?
Yes.
And what does that involve normally?
Normally, a lot of our work is just quarterly reports, submitting the information for our grants to the state, which in turn gets fed on to the federal government for funding. Disciplinary, a lot of times if there are questions about service on a vehicle, it'll come to me and I'll probably have to take it to Nancy based on the dollar amount. Do we want to fix this or are we going to do something else?
Okay. You heard her description of some of the disciplinary actions and some of the issues that she had with Mr. Gobar. Can you confirm that those are things that were shared with you?
Yeah. There have been issues on and off, and Bob has come to me with issues that he's seen that he wants addressed as well.
Okay. When the discipline is administered, she said she's not involved in that, but you are involved in that, is that correct?
Yes, I am, and in consultation with Commissioner Wolf.
Okay. And did Mr. Gobar has he had previous discipline then?
Yes.
What-
Everything from oral written reprimands to suspension without pay.
And how often does this happen?
It's intermittent. There were issues from 2014, 2015, 2016. There was no formal disciplinary actions taken until this most recent one now.
Okay. Tell me about the 2016 disciplinary action. Is that, you recall?
2016 had to do with a child on the bus that was overly boisterous that Mr. Gobar appeared to single out for disciplinary action on the bus, making him sit in one seat, always talking to him about being so loud when, in my opinion, there was all kinds of noise on that bus. He wasn't the only contributor to the noise.
And what kind of discipline was it?
That was a suspension without pay for 3 days.
Was Mr. Gobar ever put on any kind of an improvement plan, a formal one, or at least given?
As part of that disciplinary action, he was to take some classes. We had issues finding classes geared toward dealing with children in different settings, kind of like a teacher type mode. He did complete a course on managing negativity through the employee assistance program. He and I both watched that in my office.
Okay. When complaints about his conduct, when you received those complaints, did you conduct any additional investigation?
I would try to follow up on it, be it with Peggy or whoever was making the complaint. A lot of these come either through the drivers to Peggy, then to me, or Peg brings them to me, I try to follow up. Bob brings me complaints, I try to follow up. Basically, the process is the same for everybody. It's not a thorough, in-depth investigation, but I do follow up on them.
So the complaints against Mr. Gobar, was he then given an opportunity to give you his version of events?
Yes.
Okay. When he was disciplined and took a class, for example, as in 2016, did you see any changes in his behavior?
There was some improvement for a time. But then-
So it was temporary?
Yeah, but then I started getting the complaints again through Peggy and the drivers. I've only had less than a handful of complaints directly from the public.
Was Mr. Gobar ever warned that he could lose his job if things didn't change, if his behavior didn't change?
Yeah, it's stated clearly in what, especially in the suspension in 2016.
The personnel policies that we are discussing and referred to, did Mr. Gobar receive a copy of those policies?
Yes.
Do you have employees sign off that they've received those, or is there additional training on those also?
There is an annual, not really a training, but an annual session where we go through, there's documentation for workforce safety, there's documentation for our drug and alcohol policy, as well as our written policy. Plus, if the commission approves any changes, those are sent out to the employees with their payroll.
When the city commission made the decision to terminate Mr. Gobar's employment, did you support that decision?
Yes.
Well, again, leave it to you guys if you want. And ladies, if you'd like to ask any questions.
I don't have any questions.
I guess a question I would have, when you met together, the three of you, the feeling in that particular session, were you experiencing directly then the raising of voice, the insubordination, and so on and so forth?
Voice was raised, not, when I was meeting with him, no, I was probably just as long as he was. But everything was, it's not my fault. When you look back, she got to do this, she got to do that. Why should I have to do this? Why is this an issue always with me? And he did talk to me about that bus and that window and how he feels it is unsafe. I had forgotten about it. I did remember that when we met that morning. We looked at it. It is an issue, I think, for all of them, but if you're being cautious, you can safely transport people with that bus.
Well, are the buses, I mean, to be used as a carrier for passengers, don't they have to meet certain standards?
Yeah, it's all through National Highway Traffic Safety that their specifications are set up.
And these buses all meet the
Yes.
specifications?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Gobar, you can ask Monty.
Oh, yeah. As it comes to raised voices, yes, we've had a number of spirited discussions, both Monty and myself, and on more than one occasion, he's apologized to me, which I appreciate, but on the other hand, I wasn't looking for an apology. When he's lost his temper, it's just, people have conversations, they get through the discussion, and then we move on. I don't think all that much of it. I've always thought we've had a decent understanding with each other as far as, I get tired of talking with him about issues that I have in busing because I don't feel that they get met or investigated. It's like she presents her version of what she wants people to believe, and rather than anybody checking it out, verifying, proving, disproving, it's just accepted as gospel, and to me, that's no way to run anything.
Did you hear Monty's testimony about how he has conducted his own?
I don't know the depths of what he checks out. I don't know how the conversations go.
So this is another one where somebody else is at fault.
I'm not saying that he's per se at fault, but it's not just Monty, it's anybody that she presents her side or her version to, and they just gobble it up like it's gospel. And yet it doesn't take that much to read between what she's saying and what she's not saying to realize half of that doesn't meet the smell test.
So do you have any other, yeah,
And he is correct. We were scheduled to have a meeting Monday morning at the bus barn shortly after they had completed their morning routes. I was informed as well as Peg that the one driver had to leave by 8:30, so we were gonna reschedule for the afternoon. That didn't happen then either because of conflicts between our drivers and everything else, so that meeting still hasn't happened, to be perfectly honest.
Question, Monty, you had referenced receiving phone calls or correspondences from people within the community, not PEG, not other bus drivers. Could you maybe elaborate a little bit on the types of calls or the types of situations that you were made
Basically,
aware of?
the information that was relayed directly to me was from citizens who were concerned with the depth of some of the questioning from Bob. They get on the bus, you know, it wasn't just a cordial, they didn't think it was just a cordial, hey, how are you? It was more, well, what's going on? You know, all of these, trying to see more in depth, and that concerned them. And then I did also speak with the baseball coaches, and they were not pleased with some of the issues that they had during different game trips out of town.
When you say issues.
Well, a lot of negativity is what I was told, you know, toward the team, toward the coaches. Why can't they do that? You know, why is that happening? You know, that shouldn't happen to you, or you're a good team, or whatever.
Did any of that rise to the level of being acted on in a disciplinary way?
I didn't believe so.
May I address that? I don't have a, pardon me? I don't have a strong knowledge of baseball, but when I first started watching Legion baseball here, we had a very good team, very well coached, great kids from what everybody had said. And I would watch them and I was learning. I didn't play baseball competitively at any level growing up. And to see them play as well as they do, when they do, I kind of marvel at. It's kind of like I'm not mechanically inclined, so when I run across somebody who is mechanically inclined and they can explain something to me, I try and learn as much as I can from them. Any questions I ask the coaches, chances are I was trying to either understand what was going on and why, or just broaden my scope of knowledge on the topic. No insult was intended to them. As to conversations with the general public, I try to be friendly with people. I just try and talk with them, and it just makes the ride go by. How you doing? What's new and exciting? You know, it's not meant to be intrusive. It's not meant to be the third degree or anything like that. It's just me being sociable. You know, I'm not trying to upset anybody.
Anything else, Monty, that you need? Any other questions? Okay,
Can I ask Monty one question?
sure.
Monty, how many times have we had these conversations?
Dozens.
I mean, it's not just one time, it's been many, many times that there's been things.
I think everybody was aware of that. Okay, thank you, Monty. Nancy, your turn. You can stay there. Stay there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason. That's all it's gonna do.
Okay, Nancy, how long have you been held the city busing portfolio?
Well, I've held the busing portfolio since I came on the commission, which I believe was in 2012. Same as Monty. So yeah, my
Okay, and what's involved with that?
my participation is basically going to the quarterly meetings that we have and getting called when there's a major upset or the disciplinary actions that we've been taking.
And you've heard both Peggy and Monty describe some of the disciplinary actions. And were you involved in all of those or most of those?
Just in the written disciplinary ones, All the occasions that they've had, no. Did I get calls? Yes, Monty would call me when there was a major upset, or if we had a number of citizens complaining, or, passengers complaining, then I would also get a call. But I never met with them on a regular basis.
Did you receive any personal complaints from the citizens, from any citizens?
I have not.
Okay. So tell me what the supervisory process is. The chain of command is Peggy's the employee?
My understanding was Peggy would talk to Monty, and sometimes I would meet with her, and just her and I would, like, with meetings or something, and it would be her and I and Monty, and we discuss some of the issues.
So when a suggestion was made for a disciplinary procedure, were all three of you then involved in that? Or was it just you and Monty?
Mostly Monty and I,
Okay.
yep. With Peg's input at some point, but not saying he should be disciplined, just telling us what the problem was, and then we would discuss.
Did you get involved in making any additional investigation into any of those complaints?
No.
You made the motion to terminate Mr. Govar. Can you tell us why you made that motion?
Basically, with all of the complaints that we've had, that I've heard that we've had, and just, I think that was just the last straw. It was a culmination of all the complaints that we've had, and really confronting a member of the public, and her discussions with Peg, when she tells me about them, they're just really not something you should have to take when you're at your job, was my feeling.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any other questions. Anybody from the commission?
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Govar, yeah, you get a chance to ask a question.
So, by your own statement, you never investigate any of the complaints?
I've never gone out and asked members of the community or the other bus drivers. They've complained when I've been there, but I've never in-depth studied any of this.
And have I had complaints that I've voiced to you?
Yes.
And that was at direction of Mr. Obenauer. Because, well, we happened to talk about something, and he said the proper chain of command would be to talk to my busing commissioner. And not long after we had that commission, I was notified by Peg that I shouldn't bother you anymore.
You did come to my job, and I did state that to you also myself.
I don't know how else to reach you.
I gave you my cell phone number and my home phone number, and they're all listed. My cell phone number is listed and my home phone number is listed. And I did give them to you when we met. And I asked you not to come to my job. I'd meet you anytime after 5 o'clock, whenever you wanted to. And you only came to my job once, maybe twice. I don't remember. But I think it was only the once, but yes.
Well, to address that in particular, I don't remember how many times.
Yeah, I don't either.
But to address what Mr. Obenauer had told to me, I said, I know where she works, so I can talk with her, but I don't want to bother anybody at their work. And he says, that's their job. This commission stuff supersedes their normal job. That's the instructions I had. And so those are the instructions I was acting upon. So I apologize to you because, frankly, like I said, I didn't want to bother you at work, but at the time, because we hadn't spoken, I had no idea how to reach you.
Your memory is much sharper than mine, obviously, Bob. I do not remember me saying contact her at her work. I do remember telling you to contact her before talking to me.
Well, that was the only way I knew how to reach her.
Okay, I don't know if I said go to her workplace, but that's neither here nor there in my opinion. But
Well, I do specifically remember I asked, I said, wouldn't it be inappropriate for me to reach her at work? And you said, no, busing. Her commission function supersedes that.
Well,
And that's the words you used.
okay, I'm sorry, I don't remember those exact words, but
Fair enough. I don't remember everything I say either.
That concludes our presentation as to the justification for the termination, support of the termination. Mr. Gobar is now able to present his own responses to that, so. Can you
I don't know if this is gonna sound good or bad, but, the incident, the primary incident in question did happen. I knew I was wrong. And it was because I took something personally that I probably shouldn't have taken personally. But the incident that happened, I had a passenger on board and we practically got run off the road. I delivered my passenger safely to their destination, and on my way back into town, the person that had done this happened to come back from where they'd gone, so I was able to follow them to find out, to try and have a conversation with them, like, you know, to the effect of, what were you thinking? Because, you know, clearly when we're driving a city vehicle, I mean, it's like public transportation, they know this van very well. The incident in question was, I was heading south out of town, there was a rural route carrier, and they, you know, go slowly, mailbox to mailbox, everybody knows the drill. And I was simply waiting for them to slow down, pull over to drop their mail, and I was gonna swing around them and go. Well, as I was about to swing around and go, I checked over my shoulder and checked my mirror, and I see drill work coming up fast. I don't know if this person was immediately behind me and was just waiting. And just because I wouldn't have handled it the way they handled it, I understand, you know, there is, I don't know if there is a definition of right on how to do this. If I was the person in that other vehicle, I would have waited for the vehicle that was waiting to get around the postal carrier, and then when it was clear, probably would have passed. But obviously that person thought otherwise. All they were doing was thinking of themselves and that they wanted to go somewhere in a hurry, apparently. I've agreed that yes, I did have a conversation, and yes, I understand if I'm driving a city vehicle, I'm very much in the wrong for having done that. I get that. We had our conversation. My intention was to just try and let it go about my duties for the rest of the day. I got to a certain point where I was caught up with what I knew I had to do at the moment in time, and it was still kind of nagging at me. And so I took the liberty to look up their employer and have a word with their boss. My intention of that conversation was not necessarily to have anybody fired, but maybe they should get talked to for endangering other people on the road. That's their job, is to safely deliver meals on wheels, not try and run people off the road in the process of trying to deliver their meals on wheels. But I called, I spoke with the lady in charge of the operation, and not all that long after, I never bothered to check the time. I would say it was definitely less than an hour, possibly less than a half an hour, and she called me back to say that person was no longer employed with them. I suspect it's because they got terminated that did they call you or did they call her?
I was contacted.
Okay. You know, it wasn't until somebody got fired that all of a sudden they had a problem with the fact that I had a conversation with them. I'm not saying it justifies the conversation. It doesn't.
Okay.
Mr. Colbert, do you agree that you have had a history of disciplinary actions as a result of your employment?
We go through a various series of learning experiences. It was brought to my attention probably within the first 6 months that I was at Hazen Busing that, people were complaining that I wasn't wearing my seatbelt. It's like I'd gotten out of the bus, helped somebody with their groceries, go on board, got back on and forgot to reconnect my belt. And I took the person home and apparently they complained. Now, a constant complaint that I've had with Peg is that she seems to hold double standards. When I complain about somebody one of our drivers not using their belt, she does nothing. That person still drives without wearing their seatbelt. Their seatbelt is buckled, it's behind their back. I just don't appreciate the double standards that I seem to be held to.
Do you respect her authority as your supervisor?
Because of her use of double standards, no, I do not.
Is it ever possible for you to accept that authority?
She has a history of, taking whatever I complain about and ignoring it. Such as the bus driver that I was brought in to replace. I said, could we please make sure that that driver cleans the bus? I don't want to have to start off with a filthy bus. Just because they know they're quitting and what are you going to do, fire them? It's like, I thought she had the opportunity to exhort her authority on the subject and make sure it was done. Or at least have a record of it being refused, denied, whatever. It seems that if I don't want to do something, or if I can't get to something, or if I don't do something the way that she wants, it's totally wrong. And yet if somebody just out and out refuses to do something and they're female, apparently it's not a problem.
Do you think that Monty holds the same double standard that you are accusing her of having?
We mentioned an incident, and it's something that's been on the books, but he rewrote some standard operating procedures a few years back. One of the standard operating procedures was if you do an out-of-town trip, you wash your bus. Well, it seemed to me that the people that were doing the out-of-town trips weren't getting to wash their bus. They weren't being asked to wash their bus. They weren't being enforced to wash their bus. And then I was getting asked to wash their bus. And
Is that related to Monty?
he's the one that wrote it up. I presume he may have had input from Peg or possibly from Nancy or the busing committee. I don't know. I don't know the nuances, the ins and outs of how things are done. All I know is when I would say others are not being held to the same standard that I'm doing, that was an easy one to go to, because it isn't right. To me, if you're assigned this bus, you take care of this bus. As far as not washing the van, I can't begin to tell you how many times I've washed that van.
Do you get disciplined for any your behavior related to washing buses?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. So none of that is even relevant in terms of your disciplinary history.
Not that I'm aware of. It is relevant as far as my attitude. She's supposed to be a supervisor. She's supposed to be a leader. She's supposed to...
She's not the one that we're having a hearing about tonight.
I understand that, but a lot of this is related to all of this. It all boils down to the lack of leadership that we've had as long as I've been here.
Well, you've accused her of that, you've accused Monty of that.
I've been
Did you
accused of,
accuse Nancy of that too?
I've been accused of a number of things.
But would you accuse Nancy also of failing to be a leader for you?
I don't know what all responsibility she has as a busing commissioner. You know,
But it's always somebody else that's,
I try to work my chain of command. You know, I've talked with Peg when I've had issues, and when it seemed obvious I was talking to a brick wall, then I talked to Monty. And apparently there'd be a conversation because things would change for a week or so, and then things would go back to situation normal, all screwed up. I don't know the parameters of what Nancy can and cannot do on this subject, so I have a great deal of difficulty addressing that.
can the commissioners ask you some questions?
By all means.
Anybody have any?
I got one for you, Bob.
Sure.
I guess when, these, I guess, problems were, I guess, like brought up, I guess 20, I guess, 14, 15, and I guess like 16, I guess you must have gotten, I guess, like written, I guess, like letters and I guess, days off, I guess, like 16.
Correct. That was the only time I had, I believe, a written thing was in 2016. The child was very difficult, probably one of the most difficult children that I've ever had to try and deal with. I would try and kid around with the kid. I'd try and find some kind of common ground that we could communicate on, and he was just basically just trying to draw all the attention to himself, and it was frustrating to me. The other kids on the bus would complain about him, and it's like, I can't duct tape him. It's like, what am I supposed to do to the kid? I can't do anything about him. I don't know. I know that after that disciplinary incident went, we rotated routes, and I don't know if the other driver had similar issues with that child or not. I honestly don't. I don't know if they did, I don't know if they didn't, but I can't imagine that he changed his behavior.
So then I guess, I guess, have you ever called, I guess, Peggy, bad names that are not, I guess,
Respectful.
yeah, for
I'm
what-
sure I've said something in a moment of anger. It's not like she's never said anything to me, but, it's almost like she makes a point of pushing my buttons that basically leads up to something. And unfortunately, I'm foolish enough to fall for it, probably 80+% of the time.
So Bob, would you say it's appropriate to use that kind of attitude and or language with your supervisor?
It's almost a trick question. It's like, it all boils down to, she's never earned my respect, and to me, respect is earned. I mean, I will give anybody I meet a measure of respect because that's just common courtesy, just a good way to conduct yourself. When someone conducts themselves in a manner unworthy of respect, that prima facie goes out the window. She had plenty of opportunities to earn my respect, and every single time she failed.
So what you're telling me is that if you do not respect somebody, then there are no formal rules in place in terms of how you would treat that person?
I'm treating them with as much respect as they treat me.
Anybody else?
Anything else from you?
Getting back to the lady with the broken shoulder, yes. No, I never told her that she was more trouble and nobody wanted to deal with her. That's a flat out lie, and I will say it exactly like that. She complained to me that from the time she was picked up by the other bus driver to go from Golden Crescent Manor to Mirror Images, which is what, 2 to 3 blocks away? That one, the driver did not assist her getting into either the bus or the van. I don't know which vehicle was being used that day in particular. Can't say. But she was not assisted on, she was not seat belted in, and it was obvious that she was incapable of buckling her own seat belt. She told me that in great detail. She said she had to hold on with her good arm to the seat because the driver was driving like a mad person. You know, and it's like, how can you drive that way in that short of a period of time? Didn't make sense to me, but knowing the driver didn't actually surprise me.
Peggy, was that ever relayed to you by this person?
Can I say one thing? We're doing this here now, and this is what I put up with every time. You can ask one question, but what you're going to get is a totally different answer of something else. Now, you just asked about the lady, you did not ask about what did the other driver do. And I mean, anytime I have a discussion with him, that's always the way it's been. I mean, it's never that he has done anything wrong, it's always to turn around and blame someone else, that someone else has done something wrong in some other day, some other position or something like that.
I disagree with that. When I explain things, basically I'm trying to offer context. You know, it's like, there's been a number of things that she's generally said this evening, and without any context, it probably sounds okay. But if you know the context, it's not.
Okay. Pat, at this time, do we,
If there's nothing further, you can close the hearing and make a decision as to
Okay.
what you intend to do.
okay, unless anybody else has any final questions for Bob? If not, then we'll close the formal hearing. And then do we re-adjourn the meeting, or do we,
You would be adjourned.
or,
Go, you can invite motion or discussion as to.
okay,
At the moment, as I understand things, a letter has been sent of termination. And so the appropriate motion tonight would either be to support what your action you've already taken or to modify your action.
so then at this time, we would either, I'd accept a motion to uphold the decision we already made, or I'd also accept a motion if you want to change the decision we made on the 17th.
I will make that motion to uphold our termination of Robert Goldberg.
So a motion by Wolf to uphold the termination that we had on the 17th of Robert Goldberg.
I will second that motion.
Okay, second by Dan Pillar. Discussion. Roll call.
Wolf,
Aye.
Heller,
Aye.
Hack,
Aye.
Stern.
Aye.
Omenauer.
Aye. Motion carried. This time we will, meeting adjourned. Bob, if you have any other questions for Monty about exit, with your paychecks or insurance or any of that stuff, stop and see them tomorrow morning.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Monty,